everyone. Welcome back to our video conversation series with our agency partners. Today we have two fantastic guys from CXperts with us, Ramsay and Steven. We're going to do intros here in a second, but we are going to cover a fantastic topic today around Searchlight for sentiment. Their words, not mine. And really how having the mile-wide insights can give you the power to go a mile deeper for your clients, and certainly how they've done that successfully. So without further ado, Ramsay, I'll toss it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Jenny. As she mentioned, I'm with CXperts, the co-founder and CEO. So really, we focus on maximizing value exchanged at digital touch points between customers and our clients. And we came this way, along with my partner, by way of a number of digital agencies in San Diego and around the US. And we worked in a lot of multi-disciplinary digital spectrum, and we really wanted to focus in on CX. So that's exactly what we did in 2019, and we've been running ever since.
Hey, Jenny, thank you again. This is Steven Shyne, co-founder and COO of CXperts, and basically everything Ramsay said. We love to specialize in all things consumer insights, anywhere from surveys, usability studies, gathering information about what we know and what we don't yet know about customers or prospective customers, and help drive improvements to web channels, specifically on websites and apps. And it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. So thank you again for inviting us.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. I know every time we catch up, we have great conversations. So now everybody else just gets to have a piece of that. So yeah, I would love to start with sort of a broad umbrella question. Are you guys leveraging qual and quant insights today? Ramsay, you want to take this one?
Sure. And we definitely are. So I think when we, start looking specifically at the customer journey and how to find the insights that are going to quickly improve that journey, you can only lean on, the best practices you have in your bag of tricks so much. Data-driven insights are very, very critical. At the most basic level, we're trying to answer the questions of what happened, why did it happen, and now what do we do about it, or what now? So provided clean data, quantitative insights can be really effective at helping us determining what's happening in a particular customer journey or user flow, where the breakdowns are occurring and the impact or say size of those breakdowns relative to the client's traffic. I think of this as sort of the executive answer to the problem where, in a board meeting or an executive meeting, it's like, okay, what's going on? Okay, how big of a problem is it? And then, move on to solve, right? But I think quantitative insights ultimately can sound the alarm on potential problems and where they're taking place. But knowing that something happened and how big a problem it is, or how big it seems to be, is only half the story, I think. To actually prescribe a true fix, it's critical to get as many answers to the question of why something's happening. And this is where qualitative data is so crucial. The closer we can get to understanding the people's specific digital experiences and, let's say, the frustration or breakdowns that they're encountering, the more empathetic and effective a perspective we have to consult around solutions. So the combination of these two is what can be so valuable in crafting the proposed solutions or the what now in our process. So sometimes they're in the form of, let's say, an immediate bug fix or a quick messaging fix, or in some form of, let's say, hypothesis for digital experimentation and then subsequent UX design changes. So the combination of qual and quant are like two wheels of an axle, right? You shouldn't embark on some journey with only one wheel.
I love that. Yeah, that'll stick in my memory for a long time. Picturing a car falling over now. That's great. So kind of tied to that, what are y'all's core concepts in your approach to site optimization?
So I think that was a little bit specific about our process. I think our full service spectrum and our core concept is to always deliver value. And now obviously as an agency, we've got to deliver value to our clients, but more importantly, and I think why we get hired in the first place, is to increase the value that is exchanged at the touch points of our clients and their customers, as I mentioned in the outset. If we're able to increase the value end users receive from their digital interaction with our clients, then really everyone wins. So it sounds pretty straightforward. But it does require quickly, understanding the challenges or goals our clients are navigating as a business, and then saying, okay, put that away and quickly pivot to our perspective, to the customer. And in many cases, they could care less about the client's business or their challenges or their goals. They simply, want a promise or an expectation delivered on as effectively as possible. So, they're putting in time and money or something into their end of the digital experience, and they want something back out of it. So if we can guide our clients to consistently deliver this to their customers, then the trust, the brand affinity, and ultimately the revenue can all grow, and that all follows. So if we help our clients do this with maximal efficiency, our clients' optimization goals and ROI objectives tend to be met much more consistently.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and certainly that focus on ROI is what both brands and their ultimate customers care about, right? I love that you talked about, your kind of basic level question is what, why, and what now. So maybe Steven, if you wouldn't mind elaborating, once you have that why, how do you determine the what now?
Yeah, absolutely. More tactically speaking, we tend to borrow a framework that we've heard from Nielsen Norman Group. And we've had sort of an approach like this before, but we never had the words for it. And that's the refine, remodel, rebuild approach. So first we assess with our clients the sort of problem that we're dealing with. And if the fix is fairly obvious, if it's a pretty straightforward omission or a glaring error, we might just be refining the UX, where we could turn to some recommended changes in the UX, code updates, or maybe some simple A/B tests to deploy to help determine which solution is the best one for the particular problem. Other times the fix might not be so obvious. There could be sort of disconnected parts within the user flow or the customer journey. And it's not worth sort of burning down the house, but there's definitely some things that we need to fix along that path. So we might turn to more sophisticated experimentation tactics like multivariate testing or multi-page testing to help remodel some of that user experience. And well, there are some of those times where we might just be working with a client and there isn't, there's a clear deficit with competitive parity, either an offer and messaging and the overall experience, the value exchange. We're no longer delivering value to those end users the same way competitors are, and we need to fully rebuild. And that's where we'll go through wireframing, prototyping, and use the knowledge and insights gained already to help drive some of those optimization efforts to build a more valuable experience. I think you're on mute, Jenni.
Yes, I was. Thanks
That's
a lot,
okay.
Mouse. I love that that clarity of rebuild versus remodel. That makes a lot of sense. So it's difficult, it's challenging. We hear this all the time, right? That you want to identify sentiment across all of these layers and lenses. Maybe Ramsay, if you could talk a little bit about how do you identify sentiment today?
Sure. I think that's a pretty big question. So we can pick up insights and sentiment in a number of ways. I think limited sentiment can be inferred from just watching user session recordings, which it wasn't so easy in the past to even be able to do that. But you can't hear what someone's saying or know what they're thinking by watching those recordings. So I think more detail can be gained from tactics like user surveys, interviewing client-side customer support teams, analyzing call recording data, and mining reviews, obviously. These are all, though, passive approaches, so it takes quite a bit of volume to gain any confidence around a potential trend that you're seeing in user sentiment. And then I would say conversely, usability studies offer us as researchers more control, and they can provide highly detailed feedback that typically includes plenty of sentiment about digital experiences that clients are delivering, but it's inherently inefficient to scale these projects up. So those are a few tactics that we typically use. I guess the good and the bad thing about all this is that we're humans building stuff for other humans. So instincts can guide us to a degree, but it can be a slippery slope of bias reinforcement. And we always say that once we get to the point where we feel like our preference or our ego are driving our own opinions, then it's probably time to stop and seek more user insights.
And I can jump in here on this too. One thing that kind of Ramsay mentioned is we have all these various tools and abilities to go in and try to uncover sentiment. And really, it depends on the goal. We always like to start with goals. What are we trying to achieve? Sometimes that passive customer feedback is great to be able to get sentiment. We sometimes utilize this when there's a lower effort required, or the client that we're working with has very limited bandwidth, or just needs us to be pretty autonomous with our findings, and so that might be appropriate. But generally, our favorite is going to be kind of gaining actual customer feedback within some sort of either usability study, or just gaining some sentiment analysis. Again, spotlight on sentiment. So surveys, user interviews, anything like this is all phenomenal and extremely instructive. We can better fine tune and gather the insights that we're specifically looking for. So we try to pair the right tactics with the right problem. We don't just use a hammer, because eventually everything just starts looking like a nail.
That is too true. Yeah, so kind of tying to that, I would love to understand and think through, what are the biggest challenges that you see about like knowing where to go a mile deep when you're trying to determine between these different methodologies in your testing or research?
So I think that's a huge challenge, right? It's like, hey, I want to go dig in deep on something, and keeping with that analogy, right? If we all know, at least if any of us have ever dug it physically or digitally, digging is resource intensive. So if you start to dig in the wrong place, that's bad. And if you can never decide where to start digging, that's probably no better. So I think, as an example, surveys and usability studies can provide, highly textured user feedback on sentiment around a particular digital experience, but you have to be careful not to overreact to strong sentiment because it's strong sentiment. If it's from a limited sample size and you just start digging to solve that problem right then and there, you can end up basically in the wrong spot. So I would say this is sort of the reverse order of qual-quant insights process we talked about earlier. So if you think you have a great qualitative insight around sentiment and you're totally compelled to go fix that problem, but if the quantitative data prove that the sentiment is really an issue of minimal impact, you're chasing down the wrong issue entirely. So I kind of think of it like it's always a two-part test, qual and quant. The challenging part is that the two parts of that test inherently involve different tactics. So different data are collected in different ways, often at different times, or at least over differing time horizons. And so the challenge is having the confidence that the coordinates that these two type of data are sort of plotting on your map of where you're going to go dig. So I would say in an ideal scenario, a single study would allow you to effectively gather a significant enough volume of sentiment or qual data to deliver a numbers-backed confidence in what you need to do next. So you can sort of meet both criteria of that two-part test and know exactly where to dig a mile deep. That's, I think, the idea.
You just wrote WEVO's new pitch.
Yeah, right. I want to jump in with a little anecdote that just came to mind. Many years ago, we were working with an e-commerce company, and there was not enough people clicking on add to cart. There was a lot of people visiting a product page, but there wasn't any activity really around adding items into cart. So we saw quantitatively that this was an issue, and one of the recommendations that was thrown over the fence was maybe we need to make it bigger. And when we looked at it, it took up 50% of the screen, like in width already. There was no way it was visible. So it's just a very good example, very salient example of it. You can't just make buttons bigger. Like maybe there's not enough value, and maybe there's not enough information to make a decision. And that's the importance of getting the qualitative insights. But I'll never forget that. Just make the button bigger is
Can it just be the whole page? Can we just make it take the whole page? Oh, that's great. Yeah, we hear so often from our clients and our agency partners that it's really difficult to layer all of the brand and tonality and design and UX. All of these pieces fit into what you need insights and sentiment on. So that definitely resonates. So understanding, your methodology to going a mile deep, I would love to better understand, how would having like that mile wide insight view give you more power to go a mile deeper? That probably seems like an obvious question, but I would love to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to confidence and efficiency. So for me, it's the Searchlight analogy that you mentioned at the outset that we had talked about earlier on. And if you have a powerful searchlight for sentiment, you can still leverage your quantitative data to determine like what pages or user flows or area of the site to focus that light on. But then the amount of detailed data you're able to extract from that search can rapidly inform key ideas for optimization efforts through experimentation or immediate bug fixes or other refinements, as you see fit. And then in, let's say, another use case where the searchlight doesn't give immediate answers or ideas, but it really leads to, let's say, additional and more specific questions about the user experience, this can help us quickly frame up more specific usability studies to really go in and get high resolution qualitative insights that can then inform any number of CX or UX adjustments, up to and including, customer support responses, protocol adjustments in the customer support cycle, and of course, messaging changes or design and functionality improvements as well.
I'm sure a ton of digital strategists are nodding their head at that, thinking about how nice it would be to take some of that overwhelming feeling away and know exactly where to go drill in. So that's great. Yeah, so tons of great perspective and content in today's conversation. I would love to just wrap it with any specific examples that you guys can think of around, your digital optimization work, and specifically would love to just hear like where you feel like having that clarity on the why gives you that power for the what now.
Definitely. And it's not bigger button examples. We, again, rarely those work. We've previously worked with an online gaming company that relies on users to sign up for their services. So their sign up forms and overall process is paramount for them to be able to adopt new customers. And they have used traditionally web analytics and so quantitatively knew exactly that there was some inherent friction there, but they didn't and couldn't easily just sort of tag everything up and down and get some clarity into what was going on. So in order to know where to shine our spotlight, we already knew that it was on these sign-up forms. So we used session replay tools, beloved one of ours, to watch users struggle with these forms, and we can understand more about their overall aggregated click behavior and areas of frustration by proxy of those struggles or repeated clicks to one singular element. And we found that the phone number field was the smoking gun. We were able to run our findings over to the client, provide some recommendations for some changes, and once they were implemented, conversion rates improved something like 20% on those forums overnight. And literally overnight, they made the code change and then conversion rates improved. So that's certainly one where we had a great sort of hunch of where to start. We threw some sort of sentimentality onto it, and then we were able to reap rewards right away. Another example comes up where we've recently worked with a company that's a traditional brick and mortar retailer with an online e-commerce presence as well, but historically they didn't pay much attention to the web channel. It was a smaller piece of the pie, and they knew that they needed to have it. But with a very large shift in consumer behavior to digital, there was then a lot of energy and attention that went to the web channel as well, and right away. So they needed to first understand what was going on and where to even start. Now, we could start with quantitative insights, but really to help uncover some major sticking points, we turned to a usability study, and we ran several sets of users through their main user flows, and we were able to specifically identify sort of 3 specific areas within their conversion funnel where users were getting hung up, frustrated. We also uncovered some different bugs that they may have not been able to see as well. So it was a trove of qualitative insights that we were able to drive change. We're awaiting results, but I'm certain that we'll be reporting some really good findings and ways that we are able to help optimize that experience.
That's terrific. So much good just perspective and point of view. I'm sure will help all of our viewers on the agency and the direct client side. You know, obviously COVID has completely shifted not only a major focus on the direct to consumer, but certainly a complete shift in how the heck do we measure all of this qual and quant together. And I think I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again, I just love the idea of Searchlight for sentiment and really knowing where you want to go a mile deep and first investing in that understanding of the mile wide insights to do that. So thank you guys so much. This was great. I think we have another one of these coming up soon, so more to come. Appreciate the time and appreciate the perspective.
Thanks so much, Jenny. It's been a true pleasure. We really appreciate it and look forward to the next one.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Jenny. We'll talk soon.